kick off the new UNDP-funded project in close collaboration with the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Particularly, our key partner within the ministry is the Department for Climate Policy. Attendees from this side, you're welcome. My name is Saulet Sakenov. I'm working for this project, and I'm a climate analyst. And we are at this phase of launching the project. We are mobilizing the team. We will have four in total. We will have the project manager as well in due time, and yet another policy analyst will join our team. Explanation of the policy analyst in Russian. And hopefully we are looking forward to creating an adaptation process through which the climate adaptation policy would be as exciting as possible for the businesses and other relevant stakeholders, as was the case with the mitigation. And in Kazakhstan, we are having dynamic changes to mainstream the climate into the national priorities. And, we are striving the low-carbon development till 2060. We have the low-carbon strategy and other policy documents related to the reduction of greenhouse gases emissions. And yet another stage in the climate change, or another format in climate change, is adaptation. And the climate is changing, and the residents of the western part of Kazakhstan and northern part of Kazakhstan, which experience floods and droughts, problems with the yield, medicine, health sector, heat waves, and everything. So this tells to the fact that the climate is changing, and this is endangering both ecosystems and the human. And in order to get adapted to these processes, we have adaptation, including the national adaptation plans, NAPs, which include measures to ensure resilience to climate change. And this project I will make a separate presentation, but this document would this workshop would result in some deliverables, including the workshops. And for the opening, I would like to give the floor to the Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources, Madam Gulmira Galiyeva, who is a Deputy Director of the Department of Climate Policy under the ministry. Please, over to you. Good morning, dear colleagues. Let me welcome on behalf of the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources. Thank you for coming to this Inception workshop. Institutionalization of adaptation planning and integration of climate risks into the development plans of Kazakhstan for implementing adaptation measures, which is implemented together with UNDP. And this is supported by the Green Climate Fund, and climate change results in catastrophic implications. As Saulet said, we all experience the climate change implications. In our laws and regulations, we built in the necessary aspects for climate adaptation. We have adopted the lower carbon pathway till 2060 for Kazakhstan, which sets forth the climate adaptation measures. And last year, we have updated our nationally determined contributions of Kazakhstan, and these were supplemented by the climate adaptation section. And following interventions on climate adaptation, we have to go outside Kazakhstan on a regional scale. And this event is about improving our resilience to climate change. And as part of this project, through joint efforts, we will develop a comprehensive document, a National Adaptation Plan, NAP, which would set forth all the strategies and actions to address the climate change that affect the sectors of the economy and the community as a whole. In order to address the objectives, we need to coordinate, we need to communicate, we need to collaborate at every possible level. That's why I urge you to actively participate in the project implementation. And at this Inception workshop. Should you have any questions or interventions, please take the floor. Best of luck to all of you. Thank you so much, Gulmira. I would like to thank you for immediate responses. We were just a call away with the ministry in the course of preparing to this project. It was a long-awaited project, and we now launching it today. Now I would like to give the floor to Madam Asel Nurbekova, who is the director of the Energy and Environment Department, Director UNDP. Please, over to you, Asel. Thank you so much, Solet. Good morning, dear colleagues. Let me welcome you on behalf of UNDP office here in Kazakhstan at this very important event for all of us, including Ministry of Ecology, UNDP, and for Kazakhstan as a whole. As colleagues said, and in my speech, the colleagues made a reference to Antonio Guterres, who is the Secretary General, who said that climate change is now, and this year Kazakhstan witnessed the climate change, and it is important to note the importance of this project, and I'd like to share a message with you why we initiated this event. In order to formulate, to build the skeleton, the backbone of the team, Ministry of Water Resources, KAS Hydromet, Ministry of Agriculture, academia, universities, NGOs. You're all here to share expertise that would be required for the next 4 years of project implementation, because the key objective of the project, well, first of all, to assess how vulnerable our key sectors are, and to develop specific action plan to adapt these sectors. And the environmental code reads the need for the climate adaptation on a sectorial level and on a territorial level, but still nobody knows how to do this. And in the course of the coffee break before the event, we talked to the colleagues, and many countries of Central Asia drafted their maps, and we see some advantage of being behind, because now we can see what challenges our neighboring countries experienced in drafting the documents, and what guidelines or what methodologies could be best for Kazakhstan's context. And I was asking my colleagues to communicate with every invitee and identify individuals, regardless of the positions or offices they take, but those individuals who would dedicate their time for this very important work in the following 4 years. And this would include high-level official meetings and working group meetings. And this would underlie the adaptation plans for 4 key sectors and a few adaptation plans for pilot provinces of Kazakhstan. We have invited colleagues, our partners, development partners, who have been addressing adaptation on a provincial level through some provincial level projects for a while. And the key objective of the Inception meeting is to discuss what has already been done, what is available in the form of analytical briefs or some tools to avoid duplication. And we are taking this workshop as a fine-tuning tool, because we can have like an overarching vision for the country, and the national project is something special, something specific. And we have a pipeline of projects which would lead to some plans, strategies, or documents. But implementation of these documents is always lagging behind. That's why we need to be very practical. First of all, to implement realistic events of some applied nature, and on the second side, how these documents from a planning system would be an integral part of the state planning system, and it is important to understand how these events would be financed, because we have a lot of breakthrough documents which we supported on a UNDP side, but now we think how to finance this project, and therefore we have a unique opportunity to work together, to think carefully on pros and cons, possible risks, and making a new step forward to prepare the country to the adaptation processes, and we will eventually understand, will it be a national adaptation plan, because we talk about mainstreaming of the valid documents, but maybe as a result of these consultations we may decide to have one common national document. And the document is a living document, and the team is working to absorb all your expertise, and based on your expertise to create a realistic NAP. And just one more paragraph, last from my side. UNDP as a whole, it's not just Kazakhstan office, but not only the team, but it's a global network of country offices across the globe, more than 140 offices all over the place. And we would like you, representing ministries and other institutions, asking UNDP or requesting UNDP to find the relevant expertise from any corner of the world. And 53 countries have submitted their national plans to the UNFCCC. Just 53 countries, you see, which is 37% of the convention member states, of which 32 national plans were developed through the support of UNDP. And Kazakhstan would be the 33rd country to launch this initiative. Therefore, once again, let me stress, not just ourselves, the UNDP team, but UNDP as a whole would be a source of information to all of you, adding up the experience of other countries in the area of adaptation. Thank you very much. Good luck. Thank you, Asel. As Asel said, we have UNDP country office. We also have regional offices. We have international expertise. And I would like to start by inviting our colleague online. She's now in Latin America, Dr. Lily Ilieva, and she is a regional technical advisor of UNDP. And there is a standard system on which these Inception workshops are built, and she is going to tell us how this project should be built, how it should be implemented, and what planning there should be, and what be the role of the national adaptation planning for strategic documents like NDC, SDG, and what be the role of UNDP. Put up the screen of Dr. Lily Ilieva. She is joining online. Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen.
I hope you can see my screen. Apologies, I will have to speak in English. I do have limited abilities to go beyond greeting you all, but my name is Lily Ilieva. I am a regional technical advisor for UNDP, and I will be a focal point in supporting this exciting journey in the preparation of the National Adaptation Plan in Kazakhstan. For today's presentation, it will be a short one, just presenting what is the process for the National Adaptation Planning, or the NAPS formulation, and also what is the role of UNDP in supporting these processes. I hope you can see my presentation.
Can we share the screen? I can see it in my Zoom. Just a second, Lily.
Thank you, Spasiba. I will just start with a very general description of what is the national adaptation process. It might not be anything new for you, but this process enables countries to formulate and implement national adaptation plans. It was already highlighted in the previous and the welcoming note the importance and the urgency for countries to strengthen their capacities for adaptation, to formulate and to design pathways for adaptation to climate change. And you have been observing already the impacts of climate change through different hazards as floods or increased temperature, etc. So through this national adaptation planning, this is the means of identifying medium to long-term adaptation needs. And then on the basis of this and a good understanding of what are the climate change challenges and impacts, to be able to develop and implement strategies and programs to address those needs. They can be either at a regional scale, they can be at sectoral scale or at a national scale. It is a progressive iterative process, so it is not just writing a document really, but it is a very consultative and participatory process. It is country-driven, really based on what are the key needs, priorities, and opportunities for the country. And it's a transparent approach, so it is engaging in an inclusive dialogue with all concerned parties or all concerned members of the society and economic sectors in the country. The current status of national adaptation plans. So far, 55 developing countries have submitted their NAPs as of May 2024. Actually, just a few days, another country with which we work and support, Moldova, also submitted their national adaptation plan. 142 countries have undertaken at least one activity related to the process to formulate and implement a national adaptation plan. And 113 countries have submitted proposals for NAP support. So even though we do recognize the need and the urgency for having such planning processes and such strategic frameworks, you may see that there is still a lot of work ahead of us in order to achieve that every country is reaching this state of planning and reaching such strategic documents and policy framework to address and to be prepared for climate change challenges. Some of the strategic considerations for the NAP process. So the adaptation is high on political agenda. You might have been following some of the international negotiations and the conferences of parties on climate change. And adaptation financing has been becoming a topic at the top agenda. National adaptation plans offer the main vehicle for delivering on adaptation under the Paris Agreement. And the nationally determined contributions, or the NDCs, cannot be achieved without a robust adaptation plan and strategy. So majority of the NDCs include adaptation. And in the year 2025, the NDC revision and resubmission process will actually provide a significant opportunity for adaptation acceleration. So the start of this very exciting project and process in Kazakhstan would also enable these efforts to integrate adaptation and to strengthen this aspect nationally. The first global stocktake points to gaps and needs. NAPs are to be formulated by 2025. So global goal for adaptation targets has been agreed for 2030. This means that there is expected to be a global agreement of what are the targets that need to be achieved, similar to the process for mitigation or climate change mitigation and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Now the focus is also on adaptation targets to be ambitious and to be able to also incentivize and mobilize financing for the countries most in need and the communities most in need to receive such financing and support to be able to adapt to climate change. Through the lenses of UNDP and our support to adaptation planning, you can see on the map in blue is our NAP portfolio. We are very proud to be able to support the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources in this endeavor. And then through this National Adaptation Plan project financed by the Green Climate Fund, then you can see some other countries in which we work through other financing mechanisms in green, and in green with with stripes. It's where we have different, let's say, financing resources for the implementation of national adaptation planning processes. So this is maybe just a panoramic view of not only the support that UNDP is providing, but also the opportunities for knowledge exchange and generation of lessons learned in different parts of the world that can be shared in between the countries starting and engaged in the process with the national adaptation plan. So understanding a lot of the experiences that have already been generating the national adaptation plans and have been already submitted to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. This is an overview of the UNDP's portfolio of NAP support. So, as I mentioned, these processes and initiatives have diverse financial resources. On one side is the Scaling Up Ambition on Land Use and Agriculture, the SCALA, SCALA initiative, which is being implemented together with FAO, the German Ministry of Natural Resources and Conservation, and the International Climate Initiative, implemented in 12 countries. We also work with the Regional Africa Adaptation Initiative, with UNEP and with JEV on the NAP Global Support Program with 60 countries, and the Green Climate Fund, the one where this initiative in Kazakhstan is being supported. We are working with 40 countries worldwide to support governments and communities to prepare, formulate national adaptation plans. Some of the results so far from the national adaptation plans initiative that have been supported by UNDP, it is 55 NAPs that have been submitted to UNFCCC. Of these, 34 were supported by UNDP. 35 countries supported to undertake climate risk and vulnerability assessment. So this is one of the key elements to generate evidence-based information to support decision-making in identifying what are the real appropriate, the most cost-efficient adaptation measures. At least 32 countries have achieved greater alignment between their nationally determined contributions, the national adaptation planning, but also sectoral plans and budgets. More than 30 countries have been supported to establish or strengthen monitoring and evaluation systems. And 21 countries have been supported to develop, strengthen, or adopt adaptation-related legal frameworks. So this is experience and knowledge that has been gathered through the experience with supporting national governments in these pathways for national adaptation planning, and yes, there is a lot of opportunities for this knowledge exchange and technical support in this process. What we have observed so far from this process is that understanding of national adaptation planning is extending beyond ministries of environment. So in many examples of other countries engaging with line ministries, with ministries of finance and economy, has been critical for the success of the national adaptation planning. A more participatory approach is being adopted by developing countries. So through different participatory platforms and stakeholder engagement processes. Some countries have adopted a sectoral approach. So there are several examples of national adaptation plans that are focused on agriculture or focused on water. And more, there has been interest in developing national adaptation plans for the health sector as well. Accurate risk and vulnerability information are a critical input to NAP formulation. As I mentioned already, data availability and sharing remains a challenge. So we do notice through the different initiatives that information and data as such is sometimes challenging to access, or it is just not existent as it hasn't been collected. For example, meteorological information hasn't been collected very rigorously so far. But we are seeing a lot of very good examples of how such challenges can be overcome. It is really important to highlight the need for aligning the national adaptation process with the nationally determined contributions process. As once mentioned, the NAPs are really the vehicle. It's how to operationalize the nationally determined contributions in the adaptation thematic. And the NAPs submitted since 2019, they tend to be more detailed and comprehensive than earlier. This may be a result of greater financial and technical support that become available after 2018. Some lessons learned on the NAP process, which I hope would be also useful for the design and the delivery of this initiative, is the need to shift from short-term project and planning cycles to longer-term planning. So climate change is a long-term phenomena, and any planning needs to be adaptive, needs to be iterative, needs to keep in mind what are the medium and longer-term potential impacts that sectors and communities might experience. Pilot initiatives have enabled localized adaptation actions, but adaptation at scale sometimes is still missing. Stakeholder engagement is the prerequisite for effective adaptation planning and implementation, a very important element that I'm sure you will be discussing later on in this event, on what are the platforms and what are the processes that have been considered for effective stakeholder engagement in the NAP process in the country. NAPs and NDCs are highly complementary, as mentioned already. And so successful mainstreaming is supported by good coordination, collaboration, and integrated decision-making with multiple stakeholders. Effective adaptation requires a system and the whole of society approach across sectors and scales. And monitoring and evaluation is really important to be integrated in national monitoring and evaluation systems. Partnerships with different stakeholders are really key for the National Adaptation Plan implementation. And also very important, once a National Adaptation Plan is developed, then it's, and within this process actually to keep always in mind how it is going to be implemented or what financing is needed and what can be mobilized in terms of resources and financial mechanisms. So these are some of the key lessons learned. I'm sure we're going to learn much more from the process in Kazakhstan. Some challenges maybe also to mention relating to NAP formulation. I already mentioned that 55 countries is a relatively low number of submissions. So further 89 countries are at some stage of preparing their NAPs. And further support is needed with regards to technical support and financial support. And also it is considered the support needed for the second generation of NAPs in countries that have submitted their early national adaptation plans. So this is just an overview of where of where some of the challenges lay, as well as including the implementation aspect of the national adaptation plans through continued political engagement, and this alignment with the nationally determined contributions is critical. Support improved governance structures and institutional coordination is key, and there will be also a lot of good examples in this aspect that we are happy to share. Develop a pipeline of adaptation priority projects. So this is one of the key elements as well when thinking about the implementation of the national adaptation plan once formulated, and secure greater financing for national adaptation plans and adaptation more generally. Some of the adaptation finance needs, just as an overview, there needs to be a rapid increase in adaptation finance. And the Adaptation Gap Report from 2023 estimates that adaptation finance needs are 10 to 18 times greater than current international public finance flows. So this is key, once again, to what I mentioned, the need for identifying what are the kind of financial resources and mechanisms that will be available to or should be generated for implementing the adaptation or the national adaptation plan once formulated. I think I would finish with this overview of what is the status of national adaptation planning. Some of the key lessons learned, and on behalf of UNDP, we look forward, and it's really an honor to support the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources and the government in Kazakhstan in this very exciting moment, the start of this initiative for national adaptation planning in Kazakhstan. And I do wish you a good rest of the event today, and looking forward for our future collaboration.
Спасибо большое, Lily.
Lily, thank you very much. Dear colleagues, as Lily noted, I would like to wrap up and say that lots of things that she said are highly relevant for the Kazakhstani context. Lily actually noted that the work on the adaptation plans must be closely coordinated with other initiatives, such as the development of the NDC 3. The ministry is being quite active in terms of preparing the third version of NDC, and in parallel, the work is in progress to develop the National Report 9, and that is why it takes a very close coordination, because these processes are taking place in parallel, and there should be this systemic vision that reflects everything progressively with all of these documents. And since we are involved in the NAP formulation and we are starting this large project, we need to update or prepare the new NDC 3. So on our side, we of course are going to facilitate and provide support to the ministry to make sure that these two documents are aligned with each other. And colleagues, I'm sure that the expert community that works with climate change and the environment consists of pretty much the same people. So whenever we submit our suggestions or proposals or comments, we need to keep in mind that these documents, NDC and NAP, are aligned. involvement of the ministries. Lily, it's sad that you're not here in person, but it is really great to see that the adaptation plan goes beyond the Ministry of Ecology. Ministry of Ecology plays a coordinating role, and the Ministry of Ecology included into the environmental code the clause on the need of adaptation measures. The rest of the work must be carried out by the line ministries, such as the Ministry of Water Resources or Agriculture, and this work must be done by the mayor's offices on the city level. So the articles of the environmental code must be implemented based on the approach of the respective ministry or the government authority. Sectoral approach. Lily noted that it varies from country to country, and the approaches may vary as well. Some countries have the national adaptation plans that are more like a visionary document that set forth major directions, whereas other countries shoot the sector-based adaptation plans. And they define specific sectors, carry out vulnerability assessments, and then develop adaptation plans. And this is the approach which we initially set in our project. There are also adaptation plans on the regional levels or oblast levels or on the level of some geographical or administrative units. So when we prepare these sectoral adaptation plans and when we carry out several pilot projects, we carry them out on the level of regions or oblasts. And Lily said that with regards to the lessons learned from other countries, if in pilot regions, with the support of the international partners, these adaptation plans were developed quite successfully, then the problem is that there is no further scaling up, which means that the pilot project is not a guarantee that other regions of the country will be able to successfully implement their adaptation plans. We need to take this into account and think in advance. If we decide to go with the pilots, we need to keep in mind that we have to engage other regions, and by visiting different workshops or methodological or expert discussions, we need to be involved in this process in parallel. We are the drivers of this process, and we need to think in advance. Lily talked about the integrated decision making. Even if we go with the sectoral adaptation plans, we need to keep in mind that all sectoral adaptation plans had a component, or I don't know how we're going to reflect this in the documents, but all ministries have to coordinate these things with each other and work on the same platform. And this is what Lily noted, because earlier there were problems with the coordinated decision making. And I mentioned this as well. The issue of financing is key, and the project prescribes the component about financing that Saulet will talk about in details. And Lily said that in the process of preparing the adaptation plans, we need to think about the pipeline of adaptation projects. What projects we envision, what projects are necessary for the country to mitigate the consequences of climate change. We need to think of specific projects. These are the main bullet points that I took note of and that I found relevant, dear colleagues. I think that we will have an opportunity to discuss these things during the day. Now I would like to give the floor to Saulet Sakenov, who will tell us about the major components of the project and project objectives. This consultation aims to provide more information about the project and to talk about how the project teams and the Ministry of Environment or other ministries are gonna work during this project. And last but not least, I think that this is really important in my opinion. The whole essence of this event today is about preparing a report as a result of our consultations that will reflect your desires, recommendations, and proposals. This is done to validate the relevance of the project because, as you know, it takes years to develop projects. This project was developed for 2 years, and we need to validate and saying that this is still relevant, this is still important. We cannot really change a lot because the donor approved the major components and the project objectives. But with our recommendations, we can say that we need to do this or that. And there is a chance for us right now to laid the foundation for the Inception report.
And we will share this report with the donor, saying, yes, our experts, our national colleagues believe that we can change some aspect of our work. And this report is very important. Thank you for your attention. Saulet, over to you. Thank you so much, Sel. Now you will see the presentation, and I'd like to say that should you have any proposals, considerations, comments, we'll have a session dedicated to your interventions after lunch. We will have a Q&A as well, where you can raise your concerns. And one more thing. For us, it is important to know your opinion, because building the national adaptation plan should be multifaceted, top-down and bottom-up. It's not a big deal for us. It is important that the Ministry of Ecology is supporting this design, and we hope that our partners, our donors, would offer some improvements, and this would lead to some synergy. Can I have my presentation? It's already on. My name is Saulet Sakanov. I'm a project officer, and let me start. My presentation consists of a few components, and I will present one by one, because the project is larger, to a larger extent, big, for 4 years. I will start with the project brief, then I will talk about theory of change, approach to adaptation. Then I will talk about the components, outcomes, the action that will take place. Then I will talk about key partners that are present here today, but this is not final. If there are any other interested parties, they can join this endeavor, project implementation arrangements, and I will have some more information about the annual work plan. The plan that is for the current year. The project launched recently. I joined this project end of May, and we're about to kickstart this project. So this is a long name of the project, but internally we call it NAP, National Adaptation Plan, or National Plan for Adaptation, NAP. I will read it once again. Integration of climate risks into the developmental planning on a national and subnational levels, implementation of a staged and transformative measures for adaptation that would improve resilience of Kazakhstan. It's a long name. The money is 2.7 million. So the first signing was in April, and it will last till February 2028, 4 years. Now I will explain what are the priority sectors. So the ecological code identifies 4 priority sectors for adaptation: agriculture, forestry, water, and emergency situations. And in the national commitments under the Paris Agreement, these 4 sectors were identified as priority sectors. But this does not mean that other issues would not be added. These are just big pieces. I know that we have representatives from the Ministry, University of Medicine, and we know that the health component can be part of, let's say, water resources or agriculture, and these are the main pillars of work. And then, after the project concludes or successfully transforms into the permanent adaptation process, because adaptation is not about one project. Usually it's like a cycle, and it's like a set of actions, and adaptation never ends. You start an adaptation project, then you follow up, monitor, adjust, then do it again. So it goes and goes and goes. Because climate change happens everywhere. It cannot stop overnight, or you do some component. No, the climate change will be with us forever. And these are the key priority sectors in which we're going to have a lot of interventions. Theory of change. When we designed this project, we found the following barriers. First, low awareness on the climate implications for the sectors and territories. I mean, many sectors, they think, well, we are not affected by climate change, like the sector of infrastructure or roads or whatever. But going into details, the roads, because of climate change, like recently we had floods and the roads were just flushed away. And it means that the road was not ready for high water. And this is the climate change implication. Or I'm a driver. I like to travel in Kazakhstan, and I see the rubbed asphalt, the road surface, and the heat wave leads to this dents and hollows, and the asphalt, because of heat waves, becomes very soft, which result in dents. And this is maintenance cost, then health implications because of traffic accidents. I talked to the people who makes roads, and they say, why climate change? We just do roads. People do not know about the climate change, and this is relevant. This is a case for sectors as well. Then, limited capacity of national and provincial level experts, both national and private. In my welcoming remark, I brought an example when we launched the process on it was a Kyoto Protocol back in time. So when this process was launched, there were just a few experts, mostly international experts who were working in Kazakhstan for the reduction of GHG emissions. It was 21, 22. And now we have so many national, international experts, regional experts who understand what climate change is. And I'm sure because of climate change, we have this ESG movement. It's like ESG format, reporting of businesses, transparency. So everything within the climate change framework results in the big capacity building and pooling of experts. And it's a good chance for having adaptation experts. There is a good chance to share expertise and experience, and businesses can be actively involved, including academia, research, and many more. So our capacity for the adaptation experts is a bit limited, but we will push the education system with this Inception workshop, and it will create a snowball effect. Lack of operational and legal and policy basis not allowing to actively implement adaptation measures. Low-carbon strategy or development strategies never included adaptation before. And it's good news that last year or a couple of years ago, adaptation became a part of countries' commitments under the Paris Agreement in NDCs in the form of these 4 sectors. So it will be like a strategic level of adaptation. Now we want to cascade down to sectorial plans and sector-specific plans. So we have the Economic Research Institute officers here. It is a leading agency responsible for lower carbon pathway implementation. And within this strategy, we have a section on climate change adaptation. Adaptation and low-carbon development seem to be on different poles, but there are still ways to communicate with each other and thus making them cross-cutting issues. Lack of climate services or relevant climate information to assess risks and vulnerability and to make forecasts. It's a big challenge to get climate information. It's even more challenging task to process this climate-related data because of lack of experts. And since last 4 years, the Kaz Hydromet in Kazakhstan improved their transparency. They improved their access to data, and accordingly, we have data on water in open access, in public access. Data on temperature is becoming open as well. But it is another concern how to process, how to model the data. Therefore, we're looking forward that the project will have a special database accessible to all, and it will be hosted, we don't know where yet, but it will be created and then passed over so that the adaptation users may get access to information, use data, interpret, use it for research and practical purposes. Lack of standard procedures for climate risk integration in medium and long-term strategy, investment plans, and business policies. When we work on the adaptation plans, at least GHG emission reduction are usually incorporated into the provincial level documents, how this province is going to move on. But adaptation is not. So there is no mainstreaming of the climate risks. And the recent flooding events demonstrated that these risks were ignored, which resulted in very sad implications. And we lose a lot of money. So we need to allocate funds for recovery rather than for prevention. And it is important for us that with the help of the Ministry of Economic Development, with other relevant stakeholders and sectors, we can incorporate adaptation risks into the regional and provincial level planning. Therefore, I think that one of the most challenging tasks, because it's like well-established conservative system which needs to be adjusted accordingly. Limited access to climate finance and investment, yes, this is the case. Climate money is not sufficient. GHG emission reduction is flourishing because of the emission trading system, and there is like reporting on the business company level for which the money is allocated. But we want the same for adaptation. There are some international facilities, and we hope that as part of this project implementation and as part of transforming it into the national policy, we will have national resources for climate change adaptation, like regional facilities or national facilities. There is a strong movement to make the adaptation regional. I know the Central Asian countries are joining the efforts. There are twinning projects that cover frontier areas, and every country does national objectives as well. And this limited access should be somehow overcome. So these are the barriers that we still face before we proceed with the real work. And as we work on these project components, we will have the following outputs. So institutional structure, mechanisms of coordination, and standard procedures. So we will understand who is responsible, why, and the information flow will go bottom up, top down. For these 4 priority sectors, we will have procedures for adaptation processes. Then we will improve our evidence base through this special portal, and we hope that this portal that we will create together with yourself would be, well, we will still need to think carefully on the design. But the way I see it, it will be a portal which would include climate data, sectoral information, standard solutions for adaptation issues, and vulnerability assessment for different provinces. And every province would be able to see what challenges are there and then select from a range of adaptation interventions that they can implement locally, for which purpose we would need to add the investment component. And accordingly, we hope that private businesses would be able to manage their climate risks and rely on new business opportunities. The key business I see here within this program, insurance. Business insurance industry, because it is one of the key factors which can help mitigate reduce the implications of climate change and reduce the load on the national budget, like destroyed houses or accidents at the power plants. So the government is forced to allocate resources to address these breakdowns or accidents. And of course, the resources should be allocated by the government, but I'm confident, and many experts believe, that there is vast opportunity for insurance industry to tap into. If businesses are part of the adaptation process, we will reduce the cost of different interventions. And for local government and private actors, there is growing access to the investment. So as a result of this project, we want to create the concept project for climate change adaptation. It will be a large-scale intervention that would cover 4 sectors, and findings of this project, which would demonstrate that adaptation can lead to some financial flows. It's a very sophisticated chart, but at the bottom, so in the red color, you can see barriers that we face these days, and green boxes on the upper part of the screen, you can see our actions. Actually, this is all available in the project document, and each of these objectives would be explained and filled in with some activities, and these are the outputs. So numbers in the bottom, I can show you, like these ones. A3111, A3211, and these are the project items, like we're going to improve the institutional and legal framework. So we're going to work on the forestry code, on the water code, ecological code to mainstream the adaptation, building capacity. We're going to provide training for businesses, for government sector, private investment and access to climate finance. So we are going to raise funds, and this would result in strengthening management, institutional coordination, preparing actual data for adaptation solutions, activate the private sector in adaptation, and improve the financing for adaptation. So we hope that this project will lead to specific actions. Let's say 3.4, increasing adaptation finance. It's not that we raise funds and implement an activity, but it is rather having the ongoing financing process, so that this would cover many more activities in the future. And through different interventions, we're going to implement this project. This is a theory of change for this project. If, as part of the project, we set clear mandates, coordination mechanisms, and standard procedures for adaptation in 4 priority sectors on national and subnational levels, through the engagement of stakeholders and by holding trainings for decision makers from both government and private sector to mainstream adaptation into the development planning, implementing adaptation solutions, improving access to climate finance information, then Kazakhstan, knowing how to implement the project, Kazakhstan would be able to have both stepwise and transformative adaptation measures, because the government, civil society, and private sector actors in priority sectors would be aware of climate risks that would be based on the relevant institutional base, capacity, and evidence base for planning. So this is like if-then, because components of this theory of change in the project. Next, project components. So component 1, improving management and institutional coordination in adaptation planning. So this is where we're going to cover the regulatory framework, national programs. Second component, preparing actual data. This is where we're going to engage academia, educational institutions to build the capacity. Third, activating the private sector engagement adaptation. This is where the insurance industry can be participating maybe health sector or anybody else, and improving the adaptation finance. This is where we're going to present demonstration projects and the concept of a large-scale adaptation project. These are the project components.
Now, let me go through these components. What are we planning to do within each component? Component 3.1, enhancing governance and institutional coordination in the field of adaptation planning. We have to analyze the missing information, find gaps in coordination, and we will try to level them up. So, by making amendments to the regulatory framework, to the environmental code, to the water code, of course, with the support of our partners, we will integrate adaptation measures, taking into account the climate risks on all levels, and we will integrate into the process the assessment of vulnerabilities as well as verification. We will create the electronic reporting system. Probably will be some kind of a portal. And we will try to make amendments to the strategic documents. We plan to make sure that in 4 national strategic documents, the amendments will be introduced, including the clauses on adaptation. These may be the low carbon development strategy, strategy 2050, and supporting paragraphs for that strategy, or these may be the zero emission strategy, the roadmap for zero emissions, and it may be the national adaptation plan itself. With the technical version, it's going to be a document that is the national adaptation plan, but with these documents we will launch the adaptation process on the national level. But since in Kazakhstan, as Asil mentioned earlier, there are still some issues with creating new documents, we decided to take a different approach by integrating new things into the existing documents. In that case, we will avoid red tape or institutional problems regarding the creation of a brand new strategic document. We will then hold the analysis of the climate services. We will find out what are the problems regarding the provision of these services. We'll find out the gaps in data and coordination, assess the needs of suppliers and users of information. We will build capacity, create the strategy for improving the climate services, and we will expand the evidence base for adaptation. On one hand, the evidence base for adaptation means that the climate is changing, this is happening, but this is not enough for decision making. In order to make a decision, it is necessary to have some impetus, and the adaptation measures shall be included into the mandatory set of actions so that locally Hakimats and some national bodies could see what are the priorities and that these priorities need to be included into their development plans. This is how we will expand the evidence base. We will also prepare the pool of experts that can work on adaptation. We will hold trainings and, let's say, we'll come up with the system of training experts and knowledge sharing in order to have a better assessment of climate vulnerabilities. We will focus on the economic implications of the climate change and take into account the gender aspects in terms of monitoring of measures of adaptation. We'll try to teach the entire set of adaptation measures. And with regards to these measures, yes, even if a person knows about these measures but does not apply them in practice, he will forget about these measures very soon. So we want to make sure that these adaptation measures are constantly used in practice and improved on a permanent basis. I have been involved in the climate processes for a very long time, and at one point when we did the stock taking of the greenhouse gases, I remember we would just look at some model ratios of, or the ratio of the share of carbon in fuel, we would multiply it by the amount of fuel and get CO2. Right now, the process of stock taking is much more complicated, taking into account the fuel itself and the laboratory tests and so on and so forth. So the stock taking of greenhouse gases has become more complicated, which again leads to a better transparency and assessment. Same principle applies here, even if the early stage we start to do these things with the focus on improvement. This will lead to the better knowledge, competencies, and experience in terms of vulnerability assessments. And it will be also possible to look at local data, local conditions, and carry out such analysis. We will hold trainings for experts on the use of climate services. So these will be the suppliers, such as Kazakhstan, and I see, as an expert, I see that Kazakhstan will be one of the key partners to maintain this portal. And we will train experts on how to use this portal, on how to use these data. Moreover, our next component includes actual data. We will hold the assessment of climate risks for 4 priority sectors. These are agriculture, forestry, water resources, and emergency. We will hold the vulnerability assessment. This would be the initial assessment of vulnerabilities that will serve as the first step for the assessment of vulnerabilities in other sectors. We will prepare the sectoral adaptation plans for each of these sectors, and these plans will be available in the key ministries or in line ministries. We will also hold a vulnerability assessment for 4 pilot administrative units. We will choose those regions, I think at the meeting of the Committee for Project Management. If you have some suggestions about which regions we shall choose, please feel free to share your ideas with us. Well, this will be based on the territorial aspects, which means that we will develop a portal, decentralized climate portal with all data which will be inputted into this portal. We will collect all data within one portal and teach specialists how to work with this portal. We will have to verify that everything works well. This entire project looks like the adaptation process when you first implement, monitor, and then implement again. And this is what we're doing here. We implement 2 pilot projects in the respective administrative units. We will launch the pilot for adaptation plans. We will define what pilot projects we will implement a bit later. We've actually created a committee that consists of the representatives of several ministries. So during the meeting of the committee, we will decide which administrative regions we choose and what data we will have to collect. We will improve the capacity of the private sector, seeing what players are exposed to risks due to the environmental factors. Remember my example with the roads. Some of the businesses will be more exposed to climate change, and that is why they need adaptation. We will see what are these players, and we will make sure that the respective resources are allocated and the attention is paid to climate change. We'll hold the review of investment opportunities and see what schemes for subsidies or green bonds are available. I think that there is already a good experience in creating and adjusting the financial and, let's say, green mechanisms. And probably some of these mechanisms will be either modernized or we will create new mechanisms in order to finance the climate change adaptation projects. And we will create the communication strategy and implement the strategy taking into account our knowledge about barriers among the experts and broader circle because we will see what knowledge is available to regular people, and we will think about what needs to be done in order to increase their awareness. And we'll have to work with experts separately to see that the experts know how to use this information, they know about their resources, and then at the end we will carry out the assessment of how their level of knowledge improved. Then we will develop the concept of the project on priority adaptation measures. We will create the concept note, but actually it's like a pre-feasibility study for the large adaptation project that must be of a transformational nature. We don't know how we're going to do it, but I think that with your involvement, it will be possible for us to better understand what this project is going to be about, what components shall be included, and how the project shall be implemented. When we do not really know how the project will be implemented, that means that we do not really know what are the main areas of implementation in this project. But I think that we will have to bring together certain aspects that are of a transformational nature. This will help us make the adaptation process in Kazakhstan much faster. It will be launched either as a pilot one or the demo project, and it can be an umbrella project with different objectives. Our key partners include the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources. As I said, they monitored everything. They were in touch with us, asking who will attend our event or who is not going to attend our event. Thank you very much to the ministry for that. Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, newly established ministry, and we feel like there is a need in support in developing sectoral plans. That is why we really hope that the Ministry for Water Resources and Adaptation irrigation, will focus on adaptation and climate change. And Bulat Bikenovich, who is the vice minister of the respective ministry, at one point participated in the conference of parties. He participated in first conference of parties, and he was at the outset of this climate movement. Minister of Emergencies, and Minister of National Economy, since we need to integrate the adaptation into the territorial development plans and regional plans as well as district plans. Very often, as it turns out, the Ministry of National Economy, along with other organizations such as the mayor's offices or akimats, they do not have enough potential to do so just because they lack knowledge. So I believe that we will try to establish some bridge between those who know and those who can take specific actions. Maybe we'll have to work with universities, non-governmental organizations, research centers that can become really good partners for adaptation planning. Moreover, some adaptation plans are already included. They're just called differently. They're called the reduction in water consumption or fight against droughts or creation of new crops and so on and so forth. But they're all about adaptation measures, actually. We also plan to work with the non-governmental sector as one of our key partners. We'd like to cooperate with the NGOs because we have to know what are the concerns of people and what are the problems that they have. International projects, we have a great number of international projects, and I would like to mention GIZ that implemented lots of adaptation-related projects or projects of transboundary nature, but there are also projects of the World Bank and EBRD projects, and maybe the projects of other organizations. There is the International Organization for Migration, and I think that the representative of IOM is here. They also have the project on the climate change adaptation, but they take a completely different view on this project. So it would be good if we cooperated with different international projects. There is the saying, we need to avoid duplication. But again, we do not want to have duplication. We need to enhance our components. We can duplicate our work, but it must be done in such a way that it provides a new impetus. If something goes wrong, we need to just find another impetus to move things forward. Synergy with GCF Readiness Project. By the way, we have the Readiness Project that is being implemented together with the ministry, and we are planning another project, and we want to make sure that the adaptation project has a synergy with the GCF readiness, especially in terms of the assessment of climate risks for the banking sector. That's one of the objectives, and we would like to make sure that within our project we provide assistance through expertise or resource allocation, and hopefully we will be able to continue this work with them. Actually, this is the second part of my presentation, so I suggest that we stop here for the time being. Thank you very much for your attention. Asil, the floor goes back to you. Thank you very much, Saulet. Dear colleagues, I see that you're probably feeling a bit cool here, so I suggest that we take a break for coffee and come back. Since we're a bit behind our agenda, I suggest that 15 minutes will be more than enough to take a photo and have a cup of tea. Dear colleagues who are on Zoom, please just give us 15 minutes to get warm, have a cup of hot tea. We will reconvene here in 15 minutes in order to listen to Saulet, who will speak of project details. Our colleague Dosbol will let us know about the monitoring measures, and Gauhar will tell us about the gender aspects of the project, and then we will have our discussions, because it is really difficult to listen to people all the time without inputting something. So, Medina, the floor goes back to you. Please let us know where we're supposed to convene to get a group photo. Could you please get here on a so-called stage for us to take a group photo to remember this day by? This is the date of the start of the project. Thank you.